Good morning. I'm Chandler Milam. I'm the Director of Individual Giving here at YWCA Minneapolis. Thank you for joining us for our coffee and conversation event for the second time ever. This month we have Paula Landis, who is one of our program instructors for our workforce development program, just to talk a little bit more about this program that helps advance early childhood education for teachers and provide the training and support necessary to help them grow in their field. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Paula, and then we'll have some opportunity for questions at the end.
Hi, good morning. Hi, Kimpa. Hi, Gail. Hi, Chandler. Thanks for having me here. Okay, so like Chandler said, I'm a program instructor for the Early Childhood Education Workforce Development Program. And I'm going to just give a brief overview about what the program is and a little bit about who we serve. And then hopefully we got some time for some questions at the end. So I am going to share my screen. Our workforce development program started in 2017. It's funded with a variety of different funding streams at this point, and our aim is to support early childhood teachers to earn a national credential, which is called the Child Development Associate Credential, or CDA. The CDA is a pathway into higher positions of leadership in the early childhood field. It's also a pathway to higher education. And we focus not only on basic early childhood education skills and knowledge development, but also anti-bias practices for the teachers, as well as digital literacy support, that they earn certificates in that as well, which supports them as they write their portfolio, which is part of this program. And it also can serve them later on and ongoing in their position. So what teachers do, well, what they did first was we were pretty much exclusively in person prior to the pandemic, and we would meet downtown Minneapolis and at other Twin Cities locations. And then when the pandemic hit, we switched to online. And now, as that grew, now we're connecting with teachers all over Minnesota, as well as in the Twin Cities through online programming. And it's been quite a joy seeing people from all over different regions of Minnesota connect with each other and support each other around what it means to them to be a teacher as they're all pursuing their goals. And I see it as this really strong network of people that care about their community and care about each other and have a lot in common. It's a very supportive program. In addition to 5 hours of training a week in Zoom calls, we also do teachers are doing 5 hours of independent work on their own in addition to their full-time jobs. So they're writing this, what we call a portfolio, and it ends up being about 100 pages. And then we print it and assemble it, and it's part of the process that they go through to test for the CDA. We also give additional direct supports to teachers, transportation support, one-on-one writing support, individual support in their portfolio. So the instructors will also go into the Google Drive document that the teacher's working in and edit with them and give them kind of individual writing support in their file. We also meet with them individually, at least on a monthly basis, but more if necessary. And we just stay as a partner, walking alongside them as they're developing their portfolio and getting ready for this test. I'm going to go to the next slide now. So here's just a very high level overview of who the YWCA workforce development participants are. 100% of people are people with low incomes. About 98% are women. 75 80% of folks identify as people of color. About 70%, 75% of folks are either dual English speakers or they speak English as a second language. And then about 60% are recent people with recent immigration experiences. And so this is really the YWCA's mission, is eliminating racism and supporting women and girls, access to education, as well as the supports that are needed to really do that work, is something that we see, limiting people's capacity as limited, right? And it's difficult for anybody to complete an education program. If you add on to that you're new to the country, you speak a language other than English, you maybe haven't had the best school experience, you don't feel very confident, we walk alongside teachers and really give them all of the support that we can to help them see themselves as the experts that they are. Additionally, all people that participate have a high school equivalency. So they might have a GED, they might have a high school degree from another country, or a US high school diploma. A few teachers, I don't know the exact percentage, but if I had to guess, I would say just under maybe a quarter of teachers have some college experience. And then less than that, maybe 20% or less have degrees. All of the teachers that participate in this program are working with infants or toddlers or preschoolers. And like I said, they're doing 10 hours a week of professional development on top of their job and whatever other life responsibilities they have. So it's 5 hours of online classes and then 5 hours a week of them actually writing their portfolio on their own. And that's sort of a snapshot of who we are, characteristic wise. And then I put together a little photo montage of some of our most recent teachers, and you can just see these beautiful, lovely people that are the ones that are showing up every day to care for the children in their communities. And that is really the backbone of business development, especially well, in all sectors, but recently I'm blanking on the name, the rural Minnesota department has been talking for years about how since the crash of 2009, the business markets have not really bounced back since 2009. And part of that is this lack of early childhood teachers, right? And it's particularly pronounced in rural areas. People can't get childcare, they can't get to work, and they can't get to childcare, and they can't get to work, and that just keeps happening. And it's gotten even worse since the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have, for the last 20 years, the early childhood workforce has been slow to gain and retain teachers, and it's even more impactful right now. So part of our deep mission, in addition to supporting women and eliminating racism, is to find pathways to strengthen early childhood teachers' capacities to stay in the field and come into the field in the first place. I'm going to stop the share. That's most of what I have on my, that's all that I have on my slides. So I know that was brief, but I don't want to overwhelm people with all of my chatter. So do we have any specific questions, Chandler, that you know might be interesting for folks to hear about this program?
Yeah, well, I've got a question that, as you were talking, kind of came up in my mind, which is, we're talking about moving more teachers into the EC field and how we can help people get into this profession. But I also know there's been a lot of burnout in this field, and it seems like the rate at which teachers are experiencing this burnout and then proceeding to leave the profession, contributing to the shortage, has continued to increase. And I'm just wondering what you see, or how we start to reduce this burnout or better support teachers to increase longevity in this field.
Yeah, so that's a big systemic question. I'm glad you brought it up. what I've noticed in my research is that this growing awareness of well-being and teacher well-being in particular has shown a spotlight on the stressors that teachers experience,
Mhm.
financial stress, emotional stress, stress of dealing with whatever was in their life before they came to my program or came to their jobs. And it's significant. So one thing that we do is we talk about mental health when we talk about physical well-being, and how those two pieces need to be strengthened to strengthen the capacity of teachers. And um, research shows, and my experience bears out, that when early childhood teachers have people around them that are supporting them and advocating for them and telling them, we love you, we know you got this, they're much more likely to succeed in their educational endeavors. So we partner with the programs, the centers where the teachers are working at. So if they run into an issue, it's always feasible for us to reach out and connect with their program administrators and say, this teacher, I noticed they're running out of bus money and they're walking home in the city 2 hours in the cold and they're not able to get to class. What can we do to support them? Right? What's happening? Or teachers who are having issues at work or just a question, they'll come to class and they'll say, this is what happened. What do we know about it? So we sometimes talk about professional learning communities and how those are so sustaining for people, particularly for folks of color. A lot of teachers have continued to maintain their connections with the teachers that they've been in cohort with. We talk about, so we talk about that. We acknowledge trauma and abuse and what that can do to a person's physical and mental experiences. The shift has been in the early part of the 2000s, people have been talking about what are teachers supposed to do to support children who have these issues. But very recently, people have been talking about what are teachers supposed to do to support themselves who have had these issues, right? So we're in the midst of this change. And I believe that's like from COVID and from this like understanding of adverse early childhood experiences, and it's all coming together right now. And also to your other point, Chandler, the question of like, how do we stem this flow or build this retention or interest? Our program has grown massively, and it's mostly due to word of mouth. So teachers that know other teachers say, come to this program. These teachers here, the program instructors and the case manager wrap their arms around you and support you, and you're not going to fail. In fact, one of that was a recent feedback, is one teacher said, the only way you're not going to do this program is if you don't do the program, right? You absolutely are not going to fail, right? The program instructors don't exit the teachers from the program until they're sure that their portfolio is 100%, right? They're already wonderful teachers that are showing up every day to do this work. So when their time comes to test, they have a specialist, a PDS specialist, a professional development specialist, comes and observes them in their classroom. And they're already warm, loving teachers that are committed to this work. So they do great on that. They're really nervous about it, but it's always great. They're nice folks that come and do the observations, and they're very well versed in what early childhood life looks like. And then they have this 100-page portfolio that I or a different instructor has helped them put together that really showcases who they are individually and talks about their practice as a teacher. Not so much like theory, but like, this is what it looks like to nurture the emotions of a child. This is what it looks like when I connect with parents. So they feel really proud of themselves. And then they take a state test at one of those Pearson locations where it's secure. That gives people a little bit of anxiety, but they do really well. And even if someone were to fail, the council sends them a letter that says these are the areas that you need to work in. They get to study. We give them support, and then they go on and get another shot at the test, and they do great. So it's kind of like a holistic approach, Chandler, which is also what everybody's talking about lately, is like, you don't have cognitive development without social development. You don't have social without cognitive. And so we're here trying to amplify that and talk about it as a supportive group, when we're in these cohorts. We're starting our 38th cohort next month. Yeah, so we've touched probably 500 teachers since we started this program, and about half or so of those have graduated in higher education and all education. Attrition in the early part of the program is really common. But a lot of teachers come back to us, and a lot of them are going on to get their next level degrees as well. Kemp, I see you're off mute. Do you have a question?
I do have a question.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks for asking. What's the typical time frame for the completion of the portfolio?
Yep, that's a great question. Our program is about 5 months. And so the teachers are writing in their portfolios on their own every week for 5 hours. So when they start the program, we chart out their calendar for them. When is your independent writing time, right? And then they also attend class for 2 hours twice a week. So 2.5 hours. So 5 hours of classroom instruction with me or another instructor, 5 hours on their own, about 5 months. We're very individually responsive. So if somebody has something happen, like a family member is sick or they're sick or this or that, we'll create individual plans with them. But most teachers earn their CDAs within 6 months. So yeah, they already know this stuff. They just don't know sometimes that they know it, and they just need to get the pieces in place to qualify to take the test.
And so if they're currently working in early childhood education, but not necessarily for the Y, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
So they could be working anywhere for in early childhood education, and then participate in this program, which helps them get this credential.
Yes. Yes.
After they get the credential, is there any, and maybe it's not necessary because of what a critical shortage there is of ECE specialists, but is there any kind of placement support for them after they get their credential?
Right. So there can be. So again, it's very individualized. So some teachers will apply to enroll and they're not yet working in the field. Right. So we'll connect them with partner centers that we have around the state, and help them even develop their resumes. We'll do every individual piece that's necessary, or connect them to outside agencies. So we really view ourselves as part of a network of support. And sometimes teachers will choose to leave their positions that they're in while they're in cohort with us. And again, we'll connect and support and wrap around wherever it is that they're going, whatever it is that they need. So it's very dependent on the relationship that gets built through our program as well. They're coming, twice a week, and they're talking with, 10 or 15 other teachers, and really just broadening their scope of understanding. And so, yeah, we do. And but it's not a necessary, it's not like you have to go here. But yeah, a lot of, we have, I would say about 30 partners that we're working with, different centers, and they're always asking us, like, can you share out this job, right?
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And so the cohorts, I mean, I would imagine that the participants who are participating in a cohort and have that much concentrated time together doing a common thing, I think you mentioned this, it seems like the relationships would be pretty strong in some cases, and some of those cohorts maybe continue to be connected and whatnot. And if they are, that's just something they're doing on their own. It's not really something that the program is supporting or facilitating or anything. Is that right?
Right. So yeah, so they do build independent relationships. And then we also stay in touch with all of our participants for a year after or more. So I've got, 500 people on my email list, and I'll every month I'll send out a newsletter. Maybe more frequently if there's different opportunities and things happening, I'll send it out. Teachers will connect with me years after. This is the 6th year. And so I'm always talking to people that have been in the program. They're just emailing me. Sometimes they'll just email me a professional question, like, I don't know what to do here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really, I don't know if you ever participated in a cohort model of higher ed, for example, but those groups are strong. Like, I'm still in touch with my master's cohort. I'm still in touch with my PhD cohort, right? So we really bond. Yeah, it's exciting.
That's great. Wonderful program, it sounds like.
It's
I'm glad,
so much fun.
Yeah, I'm really glad to learn more about it this morning. That's great.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, sometimes teachers, well, I don't know if you know this, but recent data has been showing that early childhood teachers, about 90% of them in some cases might have at least one adverse early childhood experience, which is what we commonly call ACEs. That's a really high number. In Minnesota, 55% of people are reported as having one. And if you have one ACE, you're likely to have two. You're about twice as likely to have two, and so on. And just 1 or 2 ACE scores predisposes you to depression, anxiety, cardiorespiratory, heart failure, diabetes, all these things, right? So it's like, it's a difficult space to be in, right? When you're coming into already a very emotionally charged workplace, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard work, and they really need a lot of care.
Yeah, I really liked your description of kind of the holistic approach, because I think that is really healthy.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say about that. I was going to say, so sometimes teachers are having like extreme difficulties, right? And a lot of times they'll text me or call me ahead of time and be like, I'm having a rough day. And I always, your health comes first, when they come to class anyway, but they're always like, oh, I feel so much better, right? Like, it's a place of nurturing for them to be in cohort with other teachers. And that's something I didn't expect. That's something I didn't know was going to happen. And it's remarkable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a wonderful program and relationships and work to put out into the universe in our community. Thanks for doing that work.
Thank you for saying so. We're really proud of it.
Yeah, and Paul, I know you just talked about the mental and emotional things a lot of these teachers are going through and the way in which the program can help support them. And I know from talking to you, though, there are also a lot of physical issues that a lot of teachers kind of incur through this work. Can you talk just a little bit about some of those things that most people may not think of when they think of long-term impacts?
Gladly. So since the beginning of research regarding teachers' physical, ergonomic, musculoskeletal health, at least 60% of teachers consistently from the 1980s until now are experiencing extraordinary body pain, joint pain, muscle pain, injuries, and illness. That is something that is very under-researched and under-addressed. So like I said before, your physical and your emotional together impact the way that you're able to do your work. And so, again, to the holistic point, every day when I'm in cohort with teachers, I'm explaining to them how we move safely, right? And YWCA has a particularly perfect position for supporting that, because we're also a health and wellness space, right? And I also am a trained yoga instructor, so I'm able to give basic information about safe moving and safe handling of oneself in early childhood settings. So that's a new sort of uncharted territory of how can we really feed in, Kimpa, what you said, the emotional and psychological support along with this physical support as we're exploring the basics of child growth and development, right? So typically it's always been one or the other. You go to a fitness class, you go to a therapist, you go to get your basic child development training, and all these pieces are separate, and you're supposed to come to work for 8 hours a day doing an athletic job, right? and manage it all on your own, plus your family and your history and your economic situation. And it's not sustainable. And that, I think, is part of why we've had this huge just dropout of people never really sticking in or coming to this field. They want to be here because they want to love their community and they love being with children, but it's very hard to manage any of that, right? Under the best circumstances, let alone if you're coming in with, maybe some really traumatic experiences. So that is that's really like a big thing for me to try and figure out, how do we do that more and how can we really sustain that. Early childhood teachers should be viewed as athletes, but they're working in facilities that don't have the supports, right? They don't know how to move safely. They know some of the basic things like squat, but they don't understand like twisting and lifting. They don't understand that if they slowed down in their day and treated their day as their workout and as their mental health support, that they could be leaving their job feeling more nurtured than depleted, even though they're working hard. And that is part of my latest like edge. You're like really on the edge of my like cutting science there, Chandler. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, this sort of emphasis on holistic well-being of these teachers as they're undergoing this training and getting their specialization certificates. What is the capacity, I guess? How many teachers are you able to help in a cohort when you're trying to go through all these different aspects and be so intentional with each and every person that's part of this program?
Well, that's part of the magic of what we do. I mean, like I said, we do targeted one-on-one meetings with every teacher once a month. So a 15-minute check-in, kind of like, for those of us that had kids, like when you've got a middle school or a high schooler, you get like 15 minutes with that teacher. And that's just to give, just a private face-to-face talk. Then we do about an hour for every teacher in their portfolio, right? So if I have 15 teachers, I'm spending 15 hours a week in their portfolio, reading it, sending them independent messages, and guiding them to help them. Like, they don't necessarily know how to do anything very decorative, right, in Google Docs, but we're learning that, right? So I show them stuff, and they start adding photos and real artifacts from their class, and it just becomes this beautiful example of who they are. And then in the 2.5 hour twice a week sessions, like Kimpa said, they're building this relationship, and so they're able to share and show up with who they are. When we're midway through the program, for example, well, in every section that I teach, we have self-reflective work. So that's part of our anti-bias commitment. Is we believe when you start with yourself, you start to understand your positionality and examine the way you show up for children and the way you show up for your colleagues and the way you show up for families. So we start that the very first day, but by the time we get to the middle point of the program, we do an activity that I call windows and doors. It used to be a physical activity where you take a piece of paper, fold it in half, and on the outside of the paper, you put images, usually cut out from a magazine, of what people can see of your identity by looking at you on the outside. And then you open it up, and there's the hidden aspects of your identity, things that people can't tell about you just by looking at you. And I was just doing this activity with teachers 2 days ago, and even with those, first couple of months of building, there was so much hidden, right, about who these people were and what their needs were, what their feelings were like, what their experiences had been. And then lo and behold, after we go through that, suddenly I'm getting more and more emails about, sorry, I hadn't told you about this before. And, what can I do? And it just changed the whole experience for the teacher. And we talk about also like So now we do it on a slide, right? So it's like left hand is one and right hand is the other, and there's just this like black line down the middle. And I asked the question, like, how big is that line? That the thinner that line, the more authentically you show up, and the more authentically you show up, the better able people are to support you, and the better you are able to support yourself and others. And so I wish I could lead with that in the cohort, but I know, and they were laughing at me. They're like, yeah, we would have never told you all that stuff. We wouldn't have. So we have to wait until we build some relationship, right? We have to be silly and do funny stuff. And yeah, it's a process. It's a relationship building process. Go ahead, Chandler.
I was just going to say, and it sounds like one that the focus is really on kind of getting in at that ground floor and building things up slowly and authentically, and not trying to just meet some mold, but really meet people where they're at and help them become the best versions of themselves as teachers, not just fit kind of the stereotype that we have in our head.
Oh, you're so smart, Chandler. Yes. I mean, part of the assumptions of early childhood are based in Western theory and philosophy, right? And it's very white centric, it's very upper middle class centric, and it has a lot of assumptions around it where I'll see, and I do this myself. I've been a student of early childhood for longer than I want to even calculate right now, but I'm constantly trying to push myself into this mold of what I believe is this, like, you know, super professional, like articulate teacher, and I'm not that, right? Like, I have to be myself, and I have to recognize that there's space to change that. So I and our program's philosophy is to decenter ourselves as the experts. Like, I'm not an expert in anti-bias work. I'm not an expert in anti-racism. I'm not an expert in knowing how a teacher should be. I'm an expert in knowing that there's many opportunities for us to change the way that we think and relate with each other, particularly in the field of early childhood.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful perspective to have, to recognize there's so many opportunities, but there's also so much that you maybe aren't the specialist in, and you have the ability to help connect people with other resources and other things as well.
Well, yeah, and it would be very inappropriate for me to pretend I'm the expert, right, in other people's lives and in other people's ways of showing up in their community and experiencing their different identities.
And the last question I had for you was just, if people are really interested in this work and they're passionate about it, what are some of the ways that they can support the workforce development program, or just even in general kind of support this field of early childhood education teachers and helping to empower this field, so that not only are we better supporting our teachers and then subsequently the youth, but also, like you said, building back the economy and other things that are really contingent on this being a working system for teachers?
Yeah, there's typically, like, oftentimes we talk about early childhood as a stool with three legs, right? And one of those legs is public will and understanding the value of an early childhood teacher and the quality that they have to have even to just decide to come into the field. Nobody goes to an early childhood center who is not typically very, very committed to supporting their community. So, for parents and community members, aunties and uncles and siblings, and to anybody that knows a teacher or has a young child in their life, to really talk about that just as a high quality field, to start to have that conversation more and more in public spaces, and talk about early childhood educators as the skilled professionals that they are, is one of those things. The other levers are, like, policy changes that would support early childhood teachers more. And then, of course, the educational opportunities, so supporting that. So when people are supporting YWCA, they're supporting this as a holistic unit. If I were on my own and didn't know anything about it, I would, try and be doing advocacy. I would be trying to support my workplace to understand that working families need the support to be able to get their children to and from childcare. They need to have access to it. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to just kind of cover the workforce development program. I know it isn't something that a lot of people are very familiar with, so I think it's a really wonderful opportunity for people to see, not only do we offer early childhood education, but we're also doing this program behind the scenes to help develop a new generation of early childhood education professionals, so that whether it's at the YWCA or any of those 30-ish partnering centers that you work with, that they're going to be capable and high quality individuals available to support children in all kinds of different communities. So thank you very much, first and foremost, for sharing that today. And then second, I just wanted to open it up to you if you had any last comments or anything that kind of, as you've been talking or answering questions, that you thought would be good to share. Any last words you wanted to say before we close out this morning?
I like the way that you put it, the just understanding that the field of early childhood educators is a very diverse field. It's full of people that have full lives and are deeply committed to the work that they do. And I believe when early childhood teachers are supported, then the children are better supported, and that's our goal. And we're just going to keep doing that and keep building it out. We've taken it from, a very localized Twin Cities based program to a digital online Minnesota based program that is really connecting people together and starting to percolate up in this dialogue. And we're just excited to see where we keep going. Very excited.
That's great. And thank you again so much for joining us this morning. And thank you everyone for watching this recording or attending the event. We're very excited to be able to do this kind of work and be able to do it with the community behind us. So thank you all very much.